All right, so good morning to all of our friends in the NCLGISA virtual world right now. Certainly reiterating every single time we have a session how much we miss being together in person, but we're doing the best we can, and I think that's what this panel is all about, is this sort of new world that we're all living in. We're talking about the transition from bricks and mortar into the virtual world that many of us are still living in. Some of you are lucky enough that you've had the opportunity to go back and work full-time with your colleagues. Others of us are still working remotely, and some of us like that, and some of us probably are missing folks. Good morning, Joseph. Thanks for the good morning. So we're going to start. I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then we will certainly welcome questions from all of you and love to hear what you have to say about these topics as we go through. And so feel free, you can use the Q&A feature, you can use the chat feature, but I'm just going to take a really brief introduction for our three panelists today. We have Ann Blair, who is the CIO IT director in Campbell County, Virginia. She's a longstanding NCLGISA member, a graduate of the CIO program, and just quite frankly, helped put this entire conference together. She's been really instrumental in the conference, and we really appreciate everything that Ann does. We have Greg Morrow, who I was introducing to Ann earlier. And so Greg is the CIO for Durham County. And I think he has the dubious honor of surviving both a ransomware event and the start of COVID at exactly the same time. And so we'll let him talk a little bit about that. And so no matter how bad it seemed for all of us, Greg had it the worst. I'm just going to stick with that from an IT standpoint. And then Amy Walker, who again, another instrumental factor in the NCLGISA conferences. She's our business partner chair. She's also the K-12 representative for NCLGISA. She's the CTO in Ashe County Public Schools, a longstanding member. All three of these folks have actually graduated from the CIO program. So I'm going to just kick it off with some questions and throw the questions at the panelists. And if you guys want to ask questions, feel free to do that. Just sort of as a framing thought about this, we have folks that are completely still virtual, folks that are working in their offices once or twice a week or on a rotational schedule. Amy is I said, is K-12, and they have their kids both in a virtual environment in their school system as well as in person. And so everybody has faced some tremendous levels of change and also really leveling up. I will say, just from the bottom of my heart, I think I've said this a lot over the last 6 months, 8 months, but the thought that IT was the reason that government got to keep functioning in the middle of all of the things that were happening with COVID-19, the fact that our kids are still getting educated while they're home. I've got one in the other room right now getting educated. There's nothing that has tested IT nor been a testament to IT like this pandemic. And I congratulate all of you, everybody that's in the audience, everyone that's on the panel. I think you guys have done a phenomenal job. I hope your managers and elected officials and certainly the public understand what you guys have pulled off with, by the way, not any additional money from what I can tell. I know you got some CARES Act funds coming, but you haven't gotten it yet.
Yep.
Okay. So my first question is going to be just sort of a background question about how COVID and the pandemic have impacted your daily operations in your IT department based on, have you moved your entire team off-site? Are you on some sort of rotational schedule? Or what has been the biggest daily impact for COVID? All right, Ann, can I kick it to you first?
Absolutely. So we were primarily all in the office. I mean, occasionally I would do some remote work, but everybody else, the Campbell County's organization was very high touch. And one of the things that I said before my career comes to an end as an IT director was that I wanted to have telework in place. I didn't want something like COVID to hit for that. But so, we have now accomplished that. But so everybody, my boss came to me, I guess, third week of March and said, okay, I want all of your staff and everybody to work remote. And I was like, okay, great. So the whole office can shut down. And he was like, no, you have to have one person here. And I was like, oh, great. So we have 2 service desk technicians, and they're great customer service folks. So it really made sense to rotate between them. And then they also wanted to be able to work from home. So they alternate. There's one that's in the office 2 days a week, working at home 3 days, and then they just rotate the schedules. That has worked really well. And then I have 4 other folks that are network systems administrators, systems engineer folks, and they have been working at home since March, only coming in to do like server upgrades, putting in some network equipment, just really when they need to. And we really try to, coordinate that just so that I've been trying to go in some. I was telling Shannon earlier that I've done some work from home, but I also feel for the one person that has to be in the office. So I'll go in 2 or 3 days a week, just maybe a few hours a week, and just to kind of talk with folks, and then I'll come home and work from home. But it really majorly impacted our organization, and I think that I know everybody knew there was IT, but wow, we've definitely been recognized since March.
That's good. Well, it's good to hear that you're getting recognized at
Oh,
least,
yeah.
and maybe not blamed as much as
Right.
they normally wanted to blame.
Exactly.
What about you, Greg? How have daily operations changed for Durham County?
So again, good morning, everyone. Happy to be part of this panel with Shannon, Ann, and Amy. So thank you. For Durham County, as Shannon mentioned in the introduction, we sort of at the beginning of the pandemic, we were sort of hit with a ransomware attack. March 6th is etched in my brain. The evening of March 6th was a Friday evening when I got the dreaded call that, somebody has gotten this black screen, and I think something is going on and you need to be aware of it. And so, but since then, we have been kind of working around the clock. I would say probably through the end of April, we had most of the team in the office. Once we got our systems back up, we decided we had the opportunity then to really ask most of our employees to work remotely. And so today we have a small team of about, I'd say about 10, 12 individuals working in the office, mainly our platform team. And they're there supporting our ERP team. Our ERP team or our SAP team is still in sort of working with the finance organization, helping them get back to 100% since the ransomware attack. So we're not 100% yet. And so that team is there supporting them, Shannon, on a daily basis.
Absolutely. So just as a side note, what Greg just said, I hope everybody heard that. I hope you start reiterating statements like that in the event that you do have a ransomware attack. You should know that it is a 6-month to 9-month lead time to get yourself back up to probably about 80% functionality. I know Greg's team is much closer, much past beyond 80%, but it's long, and it doesn't matter how much the council or the commissioners, tell you to hustle. It's a process, not the topic of today, obviously, but certainly something that we can never underestimate when we talk about these kinds of events. Okay, Amy, so you have probably the craziest of experiences outside of ransomware, because you've got live instruction and virtual instruction and kids in the building and teachers trying to get prepared, and you deployed laptops and hotspots to every child in your county. So talk to us about that. What do daily operations look like maybe at the beginning, and then what's it look like now?
Right. So, Greg, first of all, my condolences. Oh my goodness. I've had my little pity parties here and there, but I'm going to count my blessings, because I can't imagine what you've been through with ransomware on top of all of that. I think things in the education world might have looked slightly different. We had to very quickly switch gears and, back up and punt, because we had to continue educating students. One thing that got us is that we were in a one-to-one in our classrooms. So all of, due to the lack of connectivity of many of our population, we had not deployed devices yet. So we had to think about, how we were going to continue instruction and evaluate which of our students had devices, did not have devices, had connectivity, did not have connectivity, and the same for some of our teacher population. It took us about a week probably to get our feet, under us and get a good plan. And but now we actually pretty much had to work a lot of the time. If in many situations where our employees had children who were home, they definitely teleworked. But we tried to make sure we had at least one person in the office all the time. And we didn't have a lot of virtual environments set up. So we really didn't have a lot of choice but to come in and work. And but we very quickly, got devices out to any of our students that didn't have them, and made some, curriculum changes to make sure our teachers were supported and they had options to provide curriculum to their students, and then, connectivity. So like you said, Shannon, it wasn't just one thing. It was a whole basket of things that we had to put together to make sure that everybody could be successful.
And Amy, now are you supporting both the virtual environment and face-to-face live instruction in Ashe County schools?
We are. We have our K-5 students are back in the building. Our 6 through 12 students are on A day, B day. And then all of our EC and pre-K are in full-time. So we have A, we have B, we have Ashe Online. So we're supporting about 4 different types of instructional platforms as far as, how our scheduling is going.
So I'm going to make people feel you're paying a little higher level. So how many devices are you actually supporting in terms of devices deployed to students, teachers, etc.? How many devices are you guys supporting?
Probably in the neighborhood of 4,500.
And how many employees do you have in your IT department?
5.
So I just wanted to make that a frame of reference for everybody. The rest of us start complaining, go talk to Amy and then come back and talk to me about your complaints.
I have an amazing team though. I'm blessed.
Yes, but it is amazing what K-12 is asked to do with such small staff levels. Mm-hmm. Donnie, good. I'm glad I made you feel better. That's what was my goal, is to make somebody else feel like, whoa, okay, you know what? It's not as bad as I thought. All right, so now the next question is really, and I think we've heard, I know Glenn ran a session on this at the last conference. We've had some conversations about this session over and over again, but the technology is the easy part of the equation. The hard part of the equation is around effective communication, and that's the truth in a virtual world as well as in a face-to-face environment. And so when you start thinking about this, what does it actually look like? What is this world like now in terms of how are you managing effective communication? Have you learned any lessons? Have you gleaned any sort of positive aspects about how to effectively communicate with your staff, your customers, your end users, whatever word you like to call them? How are you guys handling that? And I'm going to go to Greg first. I'm just going to kind of round robin you guys.
So Shannon, that's a great question. What we've done is, or what I've done is, I've had to increase communications since going to a sort of a remote work environment. And what I've noticed is that, and this might be a good lesson learned, and that is communications. The type of communications may be different depending on your constituent. And so no one, an email may not necessarily work for the executives. They may require more face-to-face, or even, the old-fashioned way, right? Pick up the phone and give them a call and give them an update and talk through what's going on. So you may have to use different modalities of communicating. That's a big lesson that I've learned since going remote and since the ransomware attack. And when you're dealing with a crisis, you may even have to have daily communications. And I know back during the ransomware event, we actually pulled the team together every morning until we hit some level of, back to, yep, I think we can do this now every other day instead of daily. So give some thought to the different types of modalities that you have to use based upon your constituents.
Absolutely. All right, Anne, anything you'd like to add to that?
So we, I think when folks first went home, it was just, especially for the 4, I think we were just really just trying to fight fires. We were trying to get laptops in. We were trying to figure out how it was going to work with just having one service desk person in. And so really, I think from, internally, we were doing, well with, the 1 and 2 service desk technicians that were in and out of the office. And then it was kind of astounding to me, but we did have quite a few people who still came to the office, to bring their laptop or, whatever, or to beg us to put them at the top of the list to get a laptop so that they could telework. But I think for the 4 folks that were, working from home, it was challenging. And I think it took a while for us to kind of figure out, really what we needed. And what we've really come up with now is, we're going to look at a collaboration communication platform such as Microsoft Teams. We didn't have that in place. And I think that's one of the things that, if we had, that would have been really helpful. Again, you've got to manage that though. So it's astounding to me that, that I've got some folks who do really well, getting the fact, that technology doesn't solve all the problems, but now it's just like, well, let's just turn on Teams. And I was like, okay, well, we've got to put something structure around that so we all know, that, because I was like, then you're going to get frustrated if someone doesn't respond or, that sort of thing. So that's what we're kind of working on now. And it would have been, from a communication standpoint, a couple of my folks, when they're trying to do like requirement gathering, I mean, we're still trying to do projects and that sort of thing. So, I had one who he just loved to pop into people's offices. Now, I don't know if everybody else loved him popping in there, but that's how he would go and gather his requirements. So he started doing that through email, working remotely. And then he realized, hey, I might just need to set up a Zoom meeting or a phone call, so sooner rather than later, so that things just don't drag on or, the email thread just doesn't go on and on.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. Amy, anything you want to add to that?
I think Greg made a great point when he talked about, really being able to differentiate in your mediums of communication. And we found that out very quickly. We needed to communicate with students all the way through, young all the way to our high schoolers. And believe it or not, it's harder to get a hold of high schoolers than it is to get a hold of your little ones. But we had to really diversify and use a lot of different mediums. We brought in programs that we hadn't, planned to purchase and buy, Remind, just the texting programs. We've really tried to use all of our mediums of social media to make sure we can get in touch with everybody. Still lots of phone calls, as people call the robocalls. We do those a lot, our email, our web pages. So we really have tried to reach them at wherever they're getting their information.
Perfect. So one of the things that, and I'm going to sort of editorialize here, but I have noticed that our organization, and being a university and also just the nature of faculty, we tend to not talk to each other that often. We're all in our offices or we're teaching our classes and we have our doors shut and we sort of operate in these little boxes. And I think my favorite thing about this entire COVID experience, I have several of them, but one of the things that has really sort of been amazing to watch is the way that our boss, our dean, has handled getting everybody together. I can remember in 20 years of being at the School of Government, one time where he brought the entire School of Government together for a big meeting. And now every Monday at 1:30, we have what he calls an all-school town hall. And we all jump onto Zoom and he gives updates, other people give updates, and he always starts with, how are you? And then he goes, no, really? How are you? And he wants people to share how they're doing and if somebody's struggling with something. And he's really encouraged us, like Teams. And I think Teams has been, I actually had a Teams message just pop up from one of my colleagues. I try to go in and regularly check on my friends, right? Check on my colleagues at work. I'll send them a Teams message. If I see that they're available, I might just quickly call them. And certainly one of the things that I've really enjoyed is some of the strike team members put together a Zoom channel. And that Zoom channel, that threaded discussion, I think I said to Ann before anybody was on earlier, that having that group to talk to has made me feel more normal in a lot of ways. We have, Amy is part of the strike team. Some of those, my husband thinks we're crazy, Amy, but those Friday afternoon at 6 p.m., just like catch up, it feels like the world isn't quite as odd anymore when we have chances to do that. I don't want anybody to have a ransomware event, by the way. That's not what I'm advocating for. But if you have one, we might come visit because I have a chance to get out of my office and I really enjoy that. My office meaning this house, let me be clear. I love my office. I think that it's been really interesting to see all of these uses of technology and all of these ways that we're now like thinking about how to connect that we probably have never done before. We've talked a little bit about scheduling, but I'd love to hear, and I'll start with Amy actually, because you mentioned this about you have employees that had kids at home, and so you let them stay at home. And so have you had to adjust schedules for any of your employees due to their kids being at home? Maybe they're virtual learning. Certainly I'm at home and luckily the university is closed down because my son doesn't have an option right now. He has to be online. And so I'd love to hear how all of you have handled this, but I'll start with Amy since you are in K-12. I imagine that's a huge tension.
So we've even had daycares closed. So parents had to be at home. So we've definitely worked with anybody. We've made it work. Our team just picks up where we need to make sure everybody's covered. Shannon, it was actually an advantage to me that my team had students, that their children were students, because they were the first ones to say, hey, this is working, this is not working. We hadn't sent devices home, so we didn't know what of our filtering product, what was going to get blocked, what was going to work, what challenges we were going to see. So it was a really nice advantage to have those team members with students who found those issues first, brought them to our attention, worked them out. Also, I'm in a small rural area up here in Ashe County, and everybody knows everybody. So my group, they're associated with the different groups. We knew who was having issues. If connectivity was an issue for a student or a family, they were very good to bring it back to us and let us know that we needed a hotspot out here, or we needed to make sure we're in that home, or just, so I have to say that I know it was probably a challenge for them, but we only asked everybody if they could to come in one day a week into the office. And that way we had the whole system was covered technical wise, with one person in the building. But I just have to say it was a real advantage and an asset to have that for us.
Amy, Glenn asked how you got feedback from other parents that were not staff members, like in terms of things that were working. You said you have, it's a tight-knit, small community, Ashe County is. Were there other ways that you solicited feedback?
I have to say one of the best things we did is we held 3 town halls where we talked to people about that Lighting House document, about, what the state was saying, our obligations or restrictions were going to be. We talked to them about what we had connectivity wise, what our plans were, what our, rollout of one-to-one was going to be. So we got a lot of questions, and we did that 3 different times. They were recorded, they were put up, they could, anybody could go back to them and see them and hear that information. Again, we tried to use all of our means of communication. We tried to make sure that our staff knew the answers so that they could relay those, those answers as well.
Absolutely. Perfect. Okay. So we'll go to Greg next, and both Greg and Ann. So Amy's in a unique situation, and Ann, I cannot remember what's happening in Campbell County with the schools, but Amy's got, the youngest kids are are the hardest to manage from a virtual school standpoint has been my personal experience. That just might be the personalities of our kids in our house, but a first grader, while quite competent at doing all kinds of things on an iPad when they choose to, are not really good about sitting in an online class for 6 hours, 8 hours a day. And so I'm interested, Greg, in terms of your scheduling. I know you're rotating, but are you doing anything with hours, with when employees are working? Have you moved any hours for people so that they can handle what might be happening? I mean, Durham County Public Schools is a lot like Wake County in that you guys aren't back and neither are we.
Yeah. Shannon, no, we haven't. We haven't really had to adjust any hours. We've just told employees to, be flexible and do what you have to do and get it done when you can. Yep.
Perfect. That's I think that's been the standard practice that I've seen in lots of places as well. My husband has made comment about how many after hour, like I mean, it's a problem, right? We're going to talk about work-life balance in a little while, but this idea that I now do lots of meetings at 7 or 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And I'm like, well, that's when work has to happen sometimes because other people have other responsibilities during the day in terms of, being at home with kids. And I actually have even changed my own schedule where when I'm teaching, I try to take a break during the time I know I have to make sure people have lunches to eat in my house because apparently they don't want to make their own lunches. They still expect mom to do that part. And what about you? Have you guys moved your schedules around?
We have not. We're similar to Greg. We have two folks that have, one has a 5-year-old and then another one has a 7 and a 4-year-old. But I think one of the things that, with the flexibility, we pretty much just, told them, especially when they're working from home, because one of them, the one that has the 7 and 4-year-old, comes in a few days a week. But when he's working from home, I mean, I happen to just pick up the phone and call him for something one day. And he had just gotten off the phone just gotten out of a virtual session, with his 7-year-old. And I think, they just, from what I'm gathering, they're just really appreciative of the fact that they're, even in the midst of this pandemic, they're able to, be there with their kids and, just really, take advantage of what's important in life. And so they're able to get their work done. And we don't really, if they take 30 minutes or an hour for that, if they end up making it up, that's fine. But at the same point, they're contributing, to their child and the education part. So it's just been one of those things. I'm not worried about the hours perspective. I expect them to get their work done. And then the other gentleman with the 5-year-old, I think he really liked the fact that, his child was, sick one day and they didn't have to take him somewhere else. He was able to, get his work done. And, that particular employee works way too much anyway. So I was like, sure, go ahead and please do that. So, but yes, I mean, it's worked really well so far.
Excellent. So I have a question that came in from Greg from Glenn Hasted. He wants to know how you encourage your team while fighting ransomware remotely. And I have to tell you, and I'm going to brag on Durham County. I hope the county manager hears this brag. I bragged on Person County yesterday, by the way, Chris Purrier. I know you're probably in the audience with some of your team. And I told about 50 attorneys that the way y'all handled incident command and management of the Person County incident was among the best I've ever seen. But Durham County manager sent the assistant to the county manager downstairs or upstairs. They were downstairs. We were upstairs with a cappuccino and espresso machine, and he made coffees for everyone, which was pretty. I don't even drink coffee. It smelled really good, which was awesome. It's easy to keep people motivated when they're working face to face, right? When you feed them and you've got these, Greg was doing these great stand-up meetings every morning with his team, kind of getting them encouraged because they were working really long hours. So when you transitioned to remote, what did you do? How did you keep it going?
Yeah, and thank you, Shannon. And a big thank you to Shannon and the NCLGISA strike team. We certainly had a lot of help. And that proved extremely valuable as well to the team to see that other people, were there ready and willing to jump in and to help. So that was a big motivator as well. And I think once we went into a remote environment, it was really just a matter of with a team of about 50 people, really just checking in with everyone on a daily basis and making sure folks were doing okay, health-wise, taking care of themselves, and not working around the clock and just becoming, getting burnt out. So again, just really increasing that communications, touching base with everyone, and making sure that they were doing good and taking the necessary steps to make sure they were taking care of themselves.
I will share this to the NCLGISA listserv. I should have done it before now, but I actually thought about Greg's entire team. And I'm pretty sure Aaron might have seen it because I posted it on my Facebook page, and Aaron and I are friends on Facebook. There was an article that came out a couple months ago. It was in maybe medium.com or something like that. And it was about surge capacity. And it was talking about how all of us, all the IT people, all the type A people were, when COVID hit, surge, we loved that challenge. We were dialed in and working at a really high level of productivity. And then all of a sudden, I always say my give a D word got broke, right? You just hit this right? Just like fall apart sort of space, and that checking in and making sure people aren't working too many hours, making sure that they're taking the rest and reset moments. I think that is so important, not just with ransomware events, but also with responding to this pandemic and how much you guys had to deploy and how quickly you had to deploy things. I think it's really important. So I will share that article to the NCLGISA listserv later today.
Awesome.
Okay, next question. If you are thinking retrospectively, is there anything that you think could have been done or been put in place beforehand that would have made your life as an IT professional or made your organization better prepared for the pandemic? What could you guys have done differently? What could you have pre-planned for? And Ann, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. Well, I definitely think I wish we would have been doing some remote work ahead of time. I think that would have been very valuable for us all. And because I think, even when we were all in technology, we had participated in, WebEx and Zoom meetings and that sort of thing, or maybe viewed them. But okay, this, the COVID hit, and now we were having to actively participate. And so, some of us are challenged, me today with my virtual background, which is using the technology here, there. And so, the smartest people that I have are, all working from home. So, but, and I would have loved to have had the communication, collaboration, the Teams, application in place. I wish we would have had an IP phone system in place. We have been working on this project for about 3 years, and we're hopefully getting closer with the contract. But that's been a challenge from making sure staff calls in and checks on voicemails and and responds from a customer service standpoint. It would have been great if we would have had just a backlog or a big supply of laptops, because that was a big challenge. And then I've joked with a couple of the service desk techs. I wish we'd have had a bunch of interns just sitting around that, we could have put to work. Because it was really, again, kind of to the points that Greg and Amy have made, you really want to try to, everybody wants to, I've got some great staff and they want to accomplish the world, but you also want them to be able to breathe. And I just had to keep telling them, look, you got to take care of yourself first, because if something happens and you're down, then, we're going to have to pull other people or that sort of thing. So I realize everybody wants everything, but just continue to remember, we've never been able to make everybody happy. It's just not meant to be. So I think, that would have been good. And I think that's pretty much it.
And in the chat, everybody is saying they wish they would have had laptops, not desktops. And I heard that in Durham County. Literally the day that we were told that we were supposed to start scattering, and it was like March the 17th. In my head, it's March the 17th. I don't know if that's the right date. That feels like the right date. And so I remember, I can't remember if it was Aaron Stern and I that were talking, and he said, the county manager said we should buy desktops because they're cheaper. And now what are we going to do? Because it's really hard to take desktops with you. So, Greg, do you want to add anything to that? Anything you wish you would have had in place?
All of the above that Ann mentioned, everything that's been said. I was thinking through that. I think one of the things I'll just speak to the ransomware side, and this is mainly for the audience, and that is, Shannon, we had planned, believe it or not, to do a tabletop exercise back in January of this year. And that date got moved, and it got moved, and it got moved until finally we got hit. And so, one of the things I wish I had done right early on, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a ransomware attack, is to really lock down a date and test your business continuity plans, right? And for the IT team, really lock down a date and test your DR strategy. And so those are some things I wish we had done early on, had really locked down that date and not let it move.
Absolutely. I've heard that a lot, actually. Every ransomware event we've worked at, we hear that sort of regularly. But I think you probably, if anybody attended the session yesterday for the strike team, one of the most stressful events in the life of a ransomware event is trying to figure out how to do payroll. Because it's always within the first 4 days of the ransomware attack is you've got to figure out payroll. So certainly, and Earl wanted to know, what is this thing called business continuity, which is pretty funny. Amy, anything that you wish you guys would have had in place? I imagine you can come up with a list a mile long.
Well, I was extremely envious of all those counties who were already in a one-to-one. They already had those policies in place. They already had those procedures in place. Agreement forms were already there. Students already had their, their Chromebooks or laptops, their devices. Connectivity was already worked out. So yes, there was a lot of things. If I could go back, I would change. I think in my mind, I thought that, the lack of connectivity we had in our county really would hamper and make the digital divide bigger. So that was a bad on my part. If I had to do over, I would have deployed much sooner because we had the devices in-house. Our staff would have been, our teachers would have been more prepared. That was tough too. None of our teachers had ever taught in a virtual environment. So, them learning to, and to all of you parents out there, kudos. I know it's been really tough to work in IT especially, but then to teach your students and your children once you got home. So kudos to everyone. But yeah, I was pretty envious of those who already had all that worked out.
Well, Amy, I think it's kind that you're giving kudos. By the way, I think all of us are getting smarter by trying to figure out how to do, I've had to learn geometry again, and the number of videos I've had to watch of my son's teacher teaching how to do geometry. I haven't done it in, a couple decades now. And I liked it that way, by the way, because I still can't do it. But quite frankly, watching teachers at the K-12 level, and some of you probably have college students, and to see the unbelievable creativity and flexibility that K-12 teachers have pulled together to teach content. My son's fifth grade teacher, I swear to you, was in a bathroom writing on a shower wall with a dry erase marker because he did not have a dry erase board when this thing first hit. And no offense to us universities, but y'all have kicked our tails left and right. High quality instructional content in a way that really meets the needs of the students. I have been blown away. And I have written letters to the school board about how impressive it is here in Wake County. And I've seen what other places are doing. I know it's not just my county. It's truly amazing to see what these K-12 teachers and support staff are able to pull off. I'm blown away. I hope that they, Scott, yes, it is a great alternative to a whiteboard. It's a little creepy to see people in their own bathrooms on a whiteboard. It was wild, I will say. So one of the things that Ann mentioned was about this work-life boundary earlier, and really, what impact has moving into virtual environments had on balancing your real world, right? Your life side of the house. I was telling at least a couple of them that I specifically remember the day I gave myself a little grace and decided not go watch my son. I sit on the sideline and watch him play his little 7-on-7 football. And my husband is one of the coaches, and I decided not to go that day. And I had 47 minutes alone in my house for the first time since March the 17th. 47 glorious minutes. And I remember that, and I know the impact and the importance of work-life balance. And I think we have all figured out that we are failing miserably. So have you guys done anything? Have you found any challenges? Have you got any strategies that you're using? Greg, you always have seemed to have, I know you play tennis, so that might be Greg's outlet is playing tennis, but what are you encouraging your staff to do? How are you capping the work day so it doesn't bleed into, and by the way, IT people have always worked, we know that.
Yeah, so great question, Shannon. Well, I try to, one of the things particularly, and this is, for managers and leaders within organizations. So one of the things I really try to do is get people to shut down, right? And so I try very hard not to send people emails or call them after 5 p.m., right? I try to keep business during business hours, because what I noticed is that if people know that I'm on Teams at night, or if people notice that I'm sending emails at night, they tend to follow that pattern, right? And so I've tried to model, a way of working such that we keep it within the boundaries of hours of work. And I've also encouraged, because we have just tons of meetings, right? I've also encouraged people on my team to block out time on your calendar, right? It's just your time. Nothing happens during your time. And if you get a meeting request, deny it, right? I've given them permission to do that. And so really trying to encourage folks to take time, because one of the things I am hearing is that, we tend to stay connected in this remote environment. And I certainly find myself working, a little bit around the clock. Because we're always, your laptop is in the living room, you sit down, and next thing you know, you're doing work. So really just try to encourage people to balance their time.
And Greg, do you have a dedicated space in your house that you work from?
I do, yes. I have a dedicated space, and but it's a space that I find myself in a lot, and so I even have to. Fortunately, I have someone in the house who also plays tennis, and so we'll get up and, okay, let's go hit some tennis balls, right?
That's great. And I actually learned that lesson, by the way, from K-12, Amy. It was so important for students to have a space, not their bed, but actually a space where they sit and they focus, and there's not a video game controller and, sitting next to them that's calling their name. And so building that space, I have a door, and you actually installed doors as a function in one of our rooms so that I can walk out and shut a door and I can kind of close it off. Okay, that's funny. Y'all are getting really in the chat, by the way.
That's
Well,
right.
I don't know if everybody doesn't know Shirley, but Randy Chris says he's rolling down the interstate on Zoom with Shirley, which is his dog, and also his best friend. Let's be clear, hanging her head out the window while he's scheduling an afternoon Zoom meeting. And other folks are saying they're working more and they're getting more done. They do have to make themselves stop. Earl probably has the winning idea, which is the appear away status on Microsoft Teams,
Yes.
right? And I love the idea of having, scheduled time, right? Nobody has to know what you're doing in that time, but putting an hour or 30 minutes, whatever it is, I find myself not doing some of the things that I normally would have done, like making myself walk outside. So now I try to schedule time to actually just walk outside and stop for a restroom break or get water or these normal things. I usually go from teaching and then I run upstairs to check on kids doing schoolwork, and then I run back downstairs and I make the lunches, and then I'm, it's always sort of chaos. I always think I'm going to get good at it, and by the way, I'm not. It's never going to be easy, I don't think, but it's interesting. And what about you? Anything you're doing for work-life balance? You definitely expressed concern about this earlier.
Yeah, I feel like that, I've worked so hard, in my role to, just really have that work-life balance. And then I was like, what the heck is this COVID thing? And now I got to work from home. So I am very fortunate that my boss was supportive of my coming in, a couple times a week and, basically doing what I needed to do for me, because that was very important. And then, similar, to Greg, I really try not to do anything after hours, because I really think, you set the example. And if you're going to be doing that, then folks, they may not ask, but they may think, oh, I need to respond to email. I don't know that I've ever had email on my phone. So I have to log in through Safari if I want to actually open my email after hours. And I really, encourage folks to, if you want to text me about, hey, how am I doing, or that sort of thing, feel free. But I really try to, at this point, use texting, use email for business, and, texting for, if you're not going to be there or something like that. But I don't want to get into these long texts, because people know that you have text all the time. But, I think, that the staff is doing, fairly well with that. I really like that suggestion, Greg, about blocking off some time. So I definitely, that's a takeaway that, I'm going to do. And, I just try to encourage folks, again, just try to take care of you. The work's still going to be there. It was there before COVID, and it's going to be there long after we're gone.
I know Amy gets to go feed a baby cow every now and again, and that's one of her work-life balances. You've never seen anything as cute as the baby cows that Amy has. I just need to drive to Ashland County and pet the baby cow. I feel pretty strong about this, Amy. I'm going to come visit you. So what else do you do, Amy? How are you encouraging your staff or even yourself to shut it down and to take those times for self-care?
I'm probably going to, you guys are making me feel bad, but I'm going to be honest here and say I totally failed at this. And I'm sure there's others out there in our arena that did too. But personally, and as a leader both, I did not do a good job of this. I mean, I can look back and see it now. I was a terrible mother. I was a terrible wife because work consumed me. And so I do want to, I'm going to take some of, the points y'all have made and definitely put those into the next few months and be better at doing that, because, but Shannon's right. I do have farm responsibilities once I get home, and that is when I breathe good and it feels better. So I need to, I need to take some advice there and make sure that I do that for my team.
Awesome.
It is hard, Amy. I failed miserably for the first several months as well. And certainly the chance to get out of the house any point at any time, I'm like, I'm by the way, I'm going to Person County and visiting Chris or whatever it is. So I think that is, it is a struggle right now. That surge capacity will explain to you why you're so bad at it, by the way. It can make you feel better about yourself. Gary Good actually asked about how do you balance not working after hours, the flex hours for your employees when they are working with kids during the day and then having to do their work in the evenings? And that's a really good question. So I know Ann's got some of this going on. Greg's got some of this. So, I mean, everybody's saying, just get your work done when you can get it done. But what if the employee then needs you because they're working on a sort of an alternative schedule, not truly like it's defined, but because you're having to they're having to manage online school or caring for someone who's at home that might not normally be there, taking care of parents, etc. Anybody have anything? Has anybody had to deal with that or thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've had I have had someone text me, but it's been very rare. I mean, it seems like the employees that are, working with their children and then, trying to make up some time after, then they're just making decisions on trying to, maybe doing some training or some other task outside of, after 5 that don't involve, other folks.
And we just got a question from on the Q&A, not on the chat. And so I'm just going to read it out loud so that folks can hear it, and any one of you three can respond to it. They're starting to get pushback from upper management about the teleworking employees. For months, all we've heard is that the health and safety are our top priority and we're going to be flexible with employees. And now it appears that it's more important than ever, as we see, I'm realizing, but as we see, numbers rising and things like that. But it appears upper management is becoming a lot less flexible. Production and services overall have remained constant, if not improved, throughout the pandemic. So they're sort of struggling with this. Is anybody dealing with this? Have you been able to make a case for the employees that are actually teleworking. And boss, it sounds like, is very receptive to teleworking. And Durham County was probably the leading county in the state for, putting in restrictions around wearing masks in public. I think they were the first in the state to put that in place. And certainly in teleworking for employees, they were very, very fast in that process. So I'm not sure if either of you have felt that pushback at all.
So Shannon, we haven't felt any sort of pushback in Durham County. I will say, and this might be a recommendation as well. It certainly is important for managers to be plugged in with the executives and what's going on within the business, within the county, within the local government, and to stay plugged in as best as you can, so that you can advocate for your team and advocate around what's going on, making the point that as long as you're getting the work done, there's no loss in productivity, there's no loss in services. We're still delivering, we're still meeting our objectives, we're still hitting our goals. As long as you can articulate that and back that up, I think it really comes down to trust. And for some, this is new, and so they don't necessarily feel that, are we really getting the work done, right? And so helping to build that trust through communications, helping to build that trust with interacting and talking with, the executives certainly plays a big role.
I'm just going to read this comment from Kevin Taylor. It came just to the panelists, and he said, it took an employee dying from COVID for our staff to start taking the mask policy seriously. And I think that's my boss, the dean, has a lake house in like somewhere around Stanley County, from what I can tell. And he said that he is sort of always blown away. Chad, you're probably listening right now, and you can certainly chime in, or Owen, that the disparity in sort of masking up, if you will, across North Carolina. And Amy, I don't know, I haven't been to Ashe County since this all started. Is there any pushback there? I know you have a new superintendent. Have you guys experienced anything slightly different than maybe what Ann and Greg have experienced?
No, there's definitely no pushback. The big difference in us is all of our folks, unless they're teaching strictly for Ashe Online, have been back to work since August 13th, something around in there. So, we're all back in and going. Now, we do have our hiccups with, we haven't had any clusters, and we haven't had any student spread or any COVID spread at school. So we've been very fortunate there. But we do have teachers who are constantly cycling in and out, who have had exposure and are going home. So, handling that with substitutes, bringing other people in the building, it is a challenge. And it's a challenge that our administrators are not just worrying about, instruction or functionality of the building. They're worrying about, COVID and watching what's going on with that and keeping subs. And so, yeah, we're a little different there than the government area.
Well, and I will say, I think from the school government perspective, we've seen it a lot, where, me personally, I'm very comfortable going out and being in communities. I do what I'm supposed to do. If I've attended NCLGISA board meetings in person, and the only rule that I have to wear a mask, I'm supposed to stay 6 feet apart, and then I'm not allowed to eat off of buffet style meals. Well, why that the school government has decided as part of our policy, I'm not exactly sure, but it is. And what's been fascinating is we've had some amazing client groups like NCLGISA that are okay with us saying, we're not having in-person meetings in the building. We've been told we will not be back in our building for courses until June of 2021. So I'm sorry to break that to all of my CIO students. Unless I can figure out a way to do it. Hopefully, if we have NCLGISA in person in May, we will find a way to make that happen and just do class there so we can come together, 6 feet apart, whatever that looks like. And so it's really interesting because, judges are in session and registered agents are working. And I mean, I I know Chad goes to work every day. Chad Copel in Stanley County. I know Glenn and his entire team in Onslow goes to work. They've been back to work since May. And so it's, there's a lot of disparity in North Carolina in terms of how people are responding to things and the way that Pender counties, for the most part, back. I will say it's added, a level of complexity for our jobs because we want to serve you guys. And I've got colleagues, who just survived breast cancer, and it's not safe for her to go out, but she shouldn't have to disclose, medical conditions personally in that space. So it is certainly an interesting thing that we're all sort of facing. So I've got another question that came in. Steve Randone said, other than virtual meetings and teleworking, what other things technology-wise may you have put in place for your users or for the public, the social distance or remote services that you weren't doing prior to COVID? Are you using kiosks or public access terminals or drive-throughs?
So we put a kiosk in for like our community development department for folks to come in and get building and zoning permits. We actually put in a couple. It really hasn't taken off as much as I think people thought they would, but they do at least have one. I think the biggest department that we saw really make some changes was like our libraries, with being able to do curbside pickup for books and, really commend those folks because, me and my team have been like, and all of you all know, we've been swamped. And then you hear like recreation and library, they're trying to figure out what they're going to do and how they're going to change services. And I'm like, what? This is, so it's been really interesting to see some things that have come into place. And, with our taxes that are due December 5th, fortunately, we were able to use some of the CARES Act funding and, waive the credit card fees. So hopefully people will use those. So there's been a few things that we've done in that area.
And there's a bunch of chats coming in. I just want to make sure that everybody is aware. And so Martha Brentel, which is Surrey County, said they have a drive-through for tax and a kiosk for register of deeds, and then appointment only if they have to come in person. Sandy, you can probably see her comment from Nash County. Teleworking is becoming challenging when providing services to the public. And so now they need more online services in all public service departments, which of course, those are large scale IT projects that you're talking about having to try to figure out how to stand up. Earl says they're offering payments by web. Most people in Person County like to come in and they don't have a drive-through. And I do have to give a shout out to Mecklenburg County Public Schools. I don't know if Sed or Molly or any of the Mecklenburg County Public Schools put on. They did the coolest thing. And I'm sure other people have done this too. They're the first ones I heard about talking about it. But they built out a drive-up program for IT. So if you are a teacher or an employee and something's wrong with your machine, you drive up and you drop your machine off with them instead of having to come into the building, which I think is a really innovative way. It's such a cool idea. And you can protect the staff, you can protect people in their cars as well. I just think it's a really, really great idea that they came up with in Mecklenburg County. Sherelle has a great question about what protocols are people using to protect IT staff at work and to support the users in the office. Are your organizations providing gloves, disposable masks, Clorox wipes, etc.? And then has anybody had to handle, upper management or other staff not wearing masks? And I don't know if any of you,
Shannon,
everybody is kind of teleworking right now, but I'd love to hear.
So at Durham County, we provide masks, we provide gloves. When it comes to servicing laptops and other equipment, we do not deliver anything. People have to come pick up stuff. We do not send our employees out. And if anybody visits our office, we have a specific space where they enter. Normally, it's only 2 people in that space. We make sure we follow social distancing, and then they cannot come in if they do not if they're not wearing a mask. And I'll just quickly add, you mentioned what technologies. We're also using chatbots. Our tax department has rolled out a chatbot, and we're looking at an enterprise chatbot that will answer some 400 questions that our residents have. And so instead of people having to, do that via phone, chatbot will provide that service for us.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
Anybody want to add a last comment? Because I have 1 minute according to, by the way, Darren Gorowski, he said chatbot, and that's because he's a chatbot guru.
Okay.
So yeah,
We
if
may
you
have
don't
to
know
con-
Darren in Goldsboro, just he's the chatbot man.
All righty, I'm gonna take that name down.
Yeah, me too. Look, Darren. Sorry, Scott. Darren's now going to go support Durham County with your chatbot. Well, I just want to thank everybody in attendance, but absolutely my utmost thanks and heartfelt gratitude for all of the panelists who participated in this. I know that it's still, we're all still a work in progress as we walk through this process. If anybody has things that they want to share, then we are more than happy, I'm more than happy to stand up sessions on any of these things that you guys are running into. Stood up some around the Tyler breach. So y'all just holler if there's something that I can do for you at the School of Government. I love doing Zoom meetings and seeing people's faces, but I just think, what Amy and Greg and Ann have shared is reflective of what all of you have been doing. And I'm so grateful for all the work that all of our public entities have done to keep things running for everyone and their communities. So great job, guys. And I hope you enjoyed the next session.